we have the business sector, and we have some, but really small projects of worker cooperatives that actually make it, as in reach the production scale and capital scale of a corporation. What do you think the problems are? So why aren't there more cooperatives? Like
Cooperatives?
Yeah.
There are quite a few, actually.
Yeah,
And
but
some of them are pretty successful. One of the reasons why there aren't more is if they become too successful, which they often do, they're bought up by a major conglomerate, which can offer the workers, pension, life in luxury for the rest of your life if you sell your shares in the corporation. That's hard to resist. So there's case after case where successful worker-owned enterprises and cooperatives have simply been, if they're too successful, they're bought up. But many of them persist, and some of them are, in fact, the main one, is Mondragon, which is now 60 years. But in the United States now, there's a proliferation of small worker-owned enterprises in the old Rust Belt, which some of them are doing pretty well.
Yeah. Well, most of the cases we see abandoned factories occupied by workers that got laid off after the factory got bankrupt or the company went bankrupt.
Well, if workers take over an abandoned factory, they have exactly the same problem that a capitalist would have. They have to get credit. You don't have the resources to start with. You have to borrow, and then you invest. But the financial institutions are not interested much in supporting worker-owned enterprises.
Yeah.
And the places where they work or where there are government incentives to do it, often in conservative states, incidentally. So like in Ohio, which is pretty much a Republican state, there have been efforts in the government part to support small worker-owned enterprises, and then they can take off. But you have to enter the credit markets, and then you run into the whole financial system, which is possible. There are even a fair number of cases where a major multinational has closed down a small profit-making enterprise where the profit was not sufficient for the multinational to waste their time on it, and where workers have offered to take it over, but they refuse to sell it to them on class grounds. It's better to lose money than to support this idea that workers can take over factories. If that idea spreads, what happens? It's kind of like sit-down strikes. Sit-down strikes in the 1930s were very successful because a sit-down strike is one step away from saying, we don't need the bosses, we can do it ourselves. So that's a real threat. And that's, if you look at the New Deal achievements, a lot of them came in the wake of effective sit-down strikes when the entrepreneurs figured, okay, we better let them have something or else we'll be in trouble.